Now that you have your silhouette created, you need to decide what you're going to be doing on your actual silhouette in the background and practice that on this image. So for example, the first thing you want to do is get rid of the background of this image so you just have your silhouette that you created. So I'm going to use my selection tool and I'm going to click on my image and just hit delete on the keyboard. So now I'm left with just my silhouette. From here I need to decide what I want to put in the background and what texture I'm going to add and how I'm going to really finalize my image. For your practice image that you're working on right now, all that you have to do is add a background to your image. You don't have to worry about adding any added object or anything like that. But for your final image, you will be adding a additional object or an additional silhouette, so make sure you keep that in mind while you're working. But there's a couple of different things that you could do for your final silhouette and your practice silhouette in the background. So whatever you decide to do for your final silhouette, make sure you're practicing that on this practice image right now. But here's one example of a simple background. The background was just filled with a color, so instead of having a white background, the background's filled with a color, and then you have a texture that's added on top. The silhouette also has an additional texture, which is interesting. So if you look at the shirt, there's an added texture on the shirt, and then on the pants that's slightly different. So that adds a little bit of dimension to the silhouette, which could be something to experiment with. The next image here is a little bit different. This one, instead of having the background with a texture, there's the texture on just the silhouette, and then there's the additional object kind of cut out inside of the face. So think about the positive and negative space and how you want that to be shown or displayed. Maybe in the background of this image you could add an additional texture or color. Coming back into Illustrator, a couple of things. First of all, with the layers, if you use this little button on the right side that has the two boxes kind of stacked on top of each other, that's where the layers are found in Illustrator. And what I'm going to do first is add a new layer. That way I'm keeping my silhouette and my layers separate from each other. A few of you might have a silhouette that's larger than your paper size. So the first thing I would do is decide how large you want your actual silhouette to be within your image. So to change the size of it, if you use your selection tool, select your silhouette, hold down Shift, and drag from the corner of your image. Again, holding down Shift will keep your silhouette in proportion, so that's very important. And then you can adjust the size of your silhouette from there and decide how big you want it within your composition. Now I'm going to work on the background a little bit. So since I added this new layer, I'm going to use that new layer as my background. So I'm going to click and drag that below my first layer, so below my silhouette layer. That way it is in the background. And I'm going to use one of my tools over here, so the rectangle tool, and I'm going to click and drag that across my background to give it a fill, so to give a color to it. So right now it's black, so same color as my silhouette, so I want to change that. So I'm going to double click on the fill and choose a color and then hit OK. So right now I have a different color in my background. Instead of having just a solid color in the background, something that works really well is using the gradient tool, which is right over here on your tool panel with the box. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to actually double click on it, and that's going to bring up the different colors that you can use for your gradient. So I'm going to click on this here, and you'll notice right away it's just black and white. If you want to change the color, if you double click on one of the colors here, so I want to change white to a different color, you'll notice that there are no other colors other than the grayscale black and white that's set up. So to change that so you have multiple colors to select from, if you come up here where this little icon is, if you click on that, go to RGB, which stands for red, green, blue, and then that's going to give you a lot of other additional colors to choose from. So right away when I click on a color, it's going to change my my background. So I'm going to double click on the black here and change that to a different color as well. Changing it to RGB and then choosing the color I want to work with. At this point, it could be interesting to experiment more with positive and negative shapes within your image. So if you hold down your rectangle tool underneath the text over here, you can select some different shapes. So I'm just going to do an ellipse tool here and put a circle around my silhouette. And right now it's the same color as the gradient, so maybe I could reverse the direction. Let me undo that. I could select my gradient tool here and reverse the direction that my gradient is going. So maybe in this image here, or in this outline, it's going the opposite direction. And that could be something cool to at least experiment with for your final image. But for your practice right now, all you have to worry about is just putting that color in the background. And then what we're going to do next is save this image as an Illustrator file. So I'm going to go up to File, Save As, and then I'm going to just save it on my desktop so I can find it easily. I'm going to leave it as the Illustrator file, and then I'm going to type in my last name as the title here, and then hit Save. Then I'm going to hit OK. And right now I'm going to go ahead and open that up in Photoshop, and the next step and the next thing we're going to do is adding textures to our image. So go ahead and save it, and then go on to the next tutorial as soon as everything is completed.